In a land far, far away, 18 years ago, a person was born that went on to love some movies. This man is going to be talking about his love for movies today. This man is taking you on a trip to the movies. Let's begin as DJ Bagpuss brings you his love for the movies. Hold tight, it's about to begin.
Okay, welcome to part 2 of DJ Bagpuss's trip to the movies. Now, I've always wanted to, really do. You know those voices that you hear in the movies? In a land far, far away. That was me, by the way. I just thought that'd be interesting to do in the introduction of a movie episode. Yeah, I've always wanted to do that job. Recording that really, powerful movie trailer guy voice, or the guy from Honest Trailers with his totally awesome voice. But I don't have an awesome voice to do that, and that does hurt after doing it for a while. I can imagine drinking lots of water after recording. But this is the first part of my love for the movies. We had a catch up in part 1, which went on for far too long. Now we're getting on to the nitty gritty. This is a movie episode, and we're going to be talking about my love for the movies, which is correctly entitled Far, Far Away, Love for the Movies, or something like that. I'll figure that out in editing. So, I'm going to talk about one of my other passions, which obviously my passion for music, but I have a huge passion for movies. And movies are just absolutely amazing. Seriously, everyone loves a good movie, and movies are kind of our way of escaping to a different reality, a place that is close to being real but is always fake, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Movies kind of take you to dark, bright, light, chilling places. They can take you to places of euphoria. They can take you to places of darkness. Movies are our scapegoat and our way of watching someone's fake existence in a real world, if that makes sense. And movies are just a huge part of the entertainment business. They bring in so much money and revenue, and they make people's careers. They bring entertainment to viewers who watch the movies, and they're just a huge part of why everyone loves a good old movie. It doesn't matter what genre you like. Everyone is a huge movie fan, and my love for the movies is because I've got such a broad, extensive love for loads of different movies. Of course, I have my favourite genres, and we'll get onto that. But I want, movies for me are something that I remember growing up. Really, I never was a big fan of movies. Like I said in the first episode of the DJ Bagpuss Show, I kind of said to you guys that I don't really have passions. I didn't have a huge passion for one particular thing as I was growing up. I kind of have lots of little things, and those little things have kind of grown as I've got older. And movies certainly was something that came when I was a lot later in life, and really now I absolutely love movies. My movie collection at home has got over 1,000 movies. It's absolutely crazy, and I don't know where I'd be without movies. They're just absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about my first memories of movies, of watching early movies, my love for the genres, and then I'm going to give you guys I'm going to give you 2 examples of my favourite genre. Also talk about 2 jobs that I'd love to do in movies, and then go on to reviewing some movies in part 3, and then Q&A with DJ in part 4. So if you like this episode, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here as well. But I'm going to firstly talk about how my love for the movies began and my earliest memories I have of watching movies, because I think it's really interesting. Everyone that watches and likes movies, do you remember the first film you saw? Your first memories of actually watching a movie, whether it was in cinema, whether it was at home? Because I don't remember watching movies as a little kid. I remember stuff that I did as a little kid, some more worse stuff than others, but I don't actually have vivid memories of watching a movie. And that isn't till I would say I was about 6 or 7. I remember the first movie I saw in the cinema. And this movie, I mean, it's 13 years old. It is incredible. I don't know whether it came out in 2004, 2005. Someone, you'll know when this movie came out. If it came out in 2005, then I was 7. If it came out in 2004, I was 6. So 6 or 7 was when I remember my first ever movie that I watched. And that movie was Madagascar, which starred Ben Stiller. It had David Schwimmer in it, and had Jada Pinkett Smith. And who else did it have? Oh, who plays Marty the Zebra? Oh, that's really going to annoy me now. Who plays Marty the Zebra? Oh, I can't remember his name. This is also a thing, like remembering movie actors' names. But anyway, it was Alex the Lion, and it was a really, really good movie. I remember going to cinema with my family to watch that. And that is the first memory that I have of actually watching a movie. I don't know why Madagascar's the first movie that came to my head. I was trying to think about this in preparation for this episode, and I really can't remember any movies before that. Like, I remember watching Toy Story. I remember watching the SpongeBob SquarePants movie when I was younger. That came out in 2004, but I think I watched that maybe before Madagascar, but my first actually memory of being in the cinema was watching Madagascar. And that first time when you were a kid, you got the popcorn, you got the sweets, getting that pick and mix that you get, you sit in the seats, and you got to make sure that you don't get bored because you're sitting for like an hour and a half, and that can be quite a tedious thing to do when you're a kid. But yeah, I remember Madagascar being the first film that I watched. And I mean, I'm trying to think of the other early movies that I used to watch. Like, I used to love all the kids' films. The first kind of, I'd say, proper, not adult movie, but movie that wasn't particularly designed for teens was probably, I'd say, or like a children's movie, was probably The Dark Knight in 2008, which is the best Batman film that they've ever made. The Dark Knight is brilliant, and I'm going to be reviewing a Batman film in part 3 of today's video. But yeah, I remember watching The Dark Knight and Hellboy 2. I remember when I was about 11, that is when I started watching loads of different movies, because my passion started as I got older. And as soon as I saw one and got to an age where, I was starting secondary school, that is when I used to watch movies upon movies, like a catalogue of movies as well that I used to really enjoy watching. And I think what's really kind of interesting about your love for movies is that you could get people that love just one genre, like one particular genre of film, and then you get other people that just have like an extensive knowledge and love for loads of different movies. And I'd say I come into the latter category of that, because certainly my love for the movies is broad. Like, if you see my movie collection, it's just so wide and so varied. But yeah, I remember watching lots of early movies and watching different and specific stuff like that. But I truly remember, kind of as I grew up, the more movies, the catalogue started to build up and up and up, and that was really interesting. And I think for me, talking about genres is probably the next way to go, because even though I've said I've got a broad knowledge and love lots of different and specific movies, for me, I think talking about kind of two in particular genres in general are ones that kind of define me. So it's like with music, as I said, I've got such a wide and broad love for music, but then in terms of movies, it's the same thing, where I love other genres more than others, but I like watching any type of movie, if that makes sense. So the first genre I'm going to talk about is then the horror genre, which is something that I've loved as I've got older, and now being 18 means that I can watch any movie whatsoever. And that is certainly, I used to watch horror movies when I was a teenager. I think we all did that at some point, let's be fair. We all used to watch horror movies that maybe you weren't supposed to watch, but now my love for horror movies is so vast. And I think people sometimes, the morals on horror movies is sometimes a bit tainted, and it kind of really annoys when I hear it in the media, when these horrible and, sometimes preposterous and violent things happen in the news. I seriously don't believe that movies and video games are the cause of it. I think they contribute to it, and I think it's a way of sometimes it can cause people harm, but I think it's all about the person and what they mentally believe, if that makes sense. I don't think horror movies are the direct cause of that, because if that was the case, then you'd get so many people that watch horror movies, doing preposterous things, and it's a small minority of people. And I think it's very easy for people to label, the propaganda of the dark side of movies as a way of blaming what is happening in the real world, because, the real world violence and movie violence are very, very different. Despite being realistic at times, they are very, very different. And I don't think someone who necessarily watches a violent horror film is going to do violent things. I think they would have to be genetically violent in themselves before that. And I think it's an easy way of people using that as an scapegoat to kind of brand when these horrible things happen. But horror films are really interesting because they do many things. They can exploit, fears of life, death, the fear of loss, the fear of, paedophobia, which is the fear of children. And horror has many, staples and trademarks, when you've got, low lit interiors, dark spaces that characters weed into. You've also got the fact of, people slowly looking at cameras. You've got the use of blood in horror movies. You've got the use of a family. You get that thing, a family that goes out camping in the woods. That they're going to be killed. You certainly know in a horror movie, if anyone goes out to the woods, and particularly teenagers, if they go off to have teenage time, that they're going to be killed. Particularly it's like the old staple, if you've got a couple making out in a car, on a hill in a horror movie, it's not going to end well for them. And there's been horror movies over the years that have kind of defined the genre. Every kind of 10 years we get that horror movie that defines that genre in itself. But the horror genre, for me, because I've seen so many horror films now, I know the scares, they don't necessarily scare me. And if a horror film does, then it is an amazing horror film, because it takes a lot to kind of scare me. I've seen movies that have been disturbing, and I've seen horror movies that have made me jump, but it takes a lot. It certainly takes a lot. But, horror is a great genre. It's a way of getting close to maybe someone that you want to get close to. You have that fear, that idea where you're in a cinema or at home and you see something that is, quite scary, and then, you go, and then you laugh with the person, and it brings you closer together. It's a way of, trying to solve your own fears, which you'll say, how can a horror film solve your own fears? Because if it makes you think about, say you watch a horror film that is something that you're afraid of, it makes you think, okay, what are the ways of, if I ever was in that situation, how can I resolve it? And it does help to kind of calm fears in that way. And I just absolutely love horror. There's a lot of stuff. If you're interested in horror, you can, write about horror, you can discuss about horror, you can get into many different aspects, or you can just like watching a horror film in general. The ends of the spectrum are kind of very vast. So that's the first genre that I really, really enjoy. And the second genre that I really, really love is a man who is an absolutely movie genius. And this person is someone that I love every one of his films, and he is just an absolute class act in terms of what he does and, what he, can produce. And that man is Quentin Tarantino. He is an absolute saviour in, what he does. And bear on one moment. Sorry, we have some company. We have some company. I am currently recording. This is Ben. We have company. Sorry, I'm currently recording for my YouTube, but hello, that's all right.
Yeah, that's a prospective student. So this is Studio 2, which has kind of its digital desk, and as you can see, able to do little tiny projects. It's kind of like a home studio kind of environmental setup. Quite a nice little place, and it's a lovely place to do things like this podcast recording. So if you get out the way.
Thank you. See you later. Well, that's a first. Sorry about that, guys. I know we were talking about movies, and the person that was on the DJ Bagpuss Show last episode, Ben Gurney, who is my college lecturer, is showing people around who I'm guessing are going to potentially be coming on the course next week. And as I've recorded 15 minutes, I wasn't going to stop recording for that. So apologies for that. You got a little bit of inkling. If you want to get involved with music technology, you've seen the setting. Cool, that is a first. That is an absolute first for that. But anyway, let's get back on to talking about my love for the movies and talking about Quentin Tarantino, who was my second genre that I really, really enjoy watching. Now, he is a sort of man who, he's eccentric, let me just say that. His films are very vast, like they are seriously extremely vast in terms of how he does his movies. I mean, they're very stylistically violent. He does great dialogue. I'm going to be reviewing one of his films in part 3 today, but his movies are just, they're so unique because he gets great screen presence with his actors. He knows where to put the camera. His movies are stylistically violent, but he also can do violence in a way that is, he does the cathartic violence, which is violence that you are allowed to enjoy, that is kind of cinema violence, and then he does the more realistic, brutal violence. And yeah, he's just, I love every single one of his films. He's done films such as Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. They're like Chinese puzzles movies that intertwine and interlink with each other. He does stuff like Kill Bill, which is his love to exploitation and kung fu cinema. Death Proof, which is a tribute and an homage to the grindhouse and horror genre of the 60s and 70s. And he loves westerns. He does the western movies of Django Unchained, which I'm wearing now in terms of merchandise, and of course his most recent film, The Hateful Eight. And he's also done a World War II propaganda epic thriller, which is, and excuse my strong language, but this is what the film's called, Inglourious Bastards, that is the title of the film, and that is a really good movie that he does. So he's just amazing, and his way of making movies is just absolutely amazing. I love what he does with the movies. I love how he shoots his movies, and it's just really enjoyable films. And even I like eccentric and kind of bizarre movies, so he's certainly in that category. And he's helped people who have gone on to have amazing careers. Samuel Jackson, Uma Thurman. He's a big fan. He works a lot with Samuel Jackson, Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know how Leonardo DiCaprio did not win an Oscar for Django Unchained. He was absolutely brilliant. Christoph Waltz has won 2 Oscars for his work in Quentin Tarantino films, and he's helped directors such as Eli Roth, who's gone on to make Cabin Fever, Hostel, those type of horror movies. So he's a really, really amazing person. He's a very interesting character. So if you're interested in seeing what he's like, then just type in his name. There's a lot of entertaining stuff that he has done. So those are like some of the genres that I really enjoy. And when I was younger, growing up, before I got into kind of talking about podcasting and becoming a radio DJ and doing stuff that I'm doing right now, I really wanted, when I was younger, to either be a film reviewer, which you're going to see a little bit of a taste of what I do in terms of movie reviews, and also I wanted to be a BBFC examiner. Now, for those of you who don't know who this is, a BBFC examiner, well, it's BBFC stands for, firstly, British Board of Film Classification. Now, these are the people that rate movies. Now, these are the sort of people that, if you can see here, you see that this is a movie that I'm going to be reviewing in a short while. Look at that, Love Bones has got a 12. And these are the people that issue the rating of the film. So these are the sort of people that they watch loads of films, television shows, they play video games, which is like my ultimate dream. And then they have to make a decision based on if the movie has violence, bad language, sex, all the things that people have said that could be harmful to children or could harm a significant proportion of people that watch them. And every single movie that you see in the cinema or at home is classified, and they've got a long rating history. But I wanted to be, when I was 18, I wanted to be a BBFC examiner. They're based in Soho in London, and that's literally the job that they do, which is absolutely brilliant. I'd love that job, but of course I'm now going down into the path of being a radio DJ and doing YouTube. But you could I can do these things on my podcast. It just gives you so many different ways of exploring stuff. But yeah, that is where my love for the movies really arose. And I've talked about genres, I've talked about my memories of early movies, I've talked about how my love for the movies began. And now we'll be going on to be reviewing some movies in part 3 of today's video. So let's get on to part 3 of DJ Bagpuss's trip to the movies. Let's go.